The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal, its transparent walls offering a view of the swirling nebula that served as the neutral meeting ground for 17 different species. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat quietly at the human delegation table, her hands folded neatly in her lap as she listened to the Zephyrian trade minister drone on about shipping routes through the Outer Rim territories. To anyone watching, she appeared the perfect picture of diplomatic patience. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple bun, her gray suit conservative and unremarkable. She took occasional notes on her tablet, nodding thoughtfully at appropriate moments. The other delegates had grown accustomed to human representatives over the past 50 years since first contact. Humans were considered ideal diplomats, patient, reasonable, and refreshingly non-aggressive compared to some of the more volatile species in the galaxy. The Korthak delegation, with their razor-sharp claws and predatory reputation, often had to be seated far from the herbivorous gentle ones. The insectoid hive mind collective communicated in rapid clicking sounds that could drive other species to madness. The crystalline resonance beings emitted frequencies that could shatter glass. But humans were easy. They spoke softly, smiled often, and seemed genuinely interested in finding peaceful solutions to every problem. The human approach to diplomacy has been most enlightening, Grand Chancellor Vex had once told the Council. They possess remarkable emotional control and show an admirable commitment to peaceful resolution of conflicts. What the galaxy didn't know was that Sarah Chen had killed her first enemy combatant at age 19 during Earth's final corporate wars. She had served in 3 separate military campaigns before transitioning to diplomatic service. The scar hidden beneath her left sleeve came from a plasma blade that had nearly severed her arm during a boarding action on a rebel station. The steady calm that other species admired was actually the controlled stillness of an apex predator evaluating potential threats. As the Zephyrian minister continued his presentation, Sarah's enhanced hearing picked up the subtle conversation happening 3 tables away. The Korthak were discussing something in their native tongue, their voices pitched low enough that their translation devices wouldn't transmit it to the General Assembly. Most species would have missed it entirely, but humans had evolved as persistence hunters on a world where survival meant tracking prey across vast distances using every available sense. The mineral rights in Sector 7 would be perfect for our new colony ships, one Korthak was saying. The humans have no military presence there. Their survey teams are just scientists and engineers. Agreed, replied another. We take the system, claim it was uninhabited when we arrived. The humans are too soft to fight back. They'll file a formal complaint and ask for mediation. Sarah's expression never changed. But her finger tapped once against her tablet, a signal that would alert the Human Intelligence Network to begin monitoring Korthak military movements. On Earth, human children learned early that the most dangerous predators were the ones that didn't look threatening until it was too late. The session continued for another 4 hours. Sarah participated in discussions about trade regulations, contributed to a debate about deep space mining rights, and helped draft a resolution for the protection of developing worlds. To outside observers, she was the model of diplomatic professionalism. Inside, her mind was cataloging every piece of information, every subtle threat, every weakness displayed by potential enemies. During the break, she approached the Vegan delegation, a species of tall, ethereal beings known for their pacifist philosophy and advanced medical technology. Their leader, High Healer Luminara, greeted her with the traditional gesture of open palms. Ambassador Chen, your species continues to impress us with your commitment to peace, Luminara said, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of her people. The Vegans have long believed that true strength lies in restraint and compassion. Thank you, High Healer, Sarah replied with a warm smile. We've learned much from your example over the years. What she didn't mention was that humans had spent the last 50 years studying every species in the galaxy with the intensity of a pack of wolves, learning the habits of potential prey. They knew that vegans had no military capabilities beyond ceremonial guards, that their homeworld was protected only by automated defense satellites that could be disabled by a focused electromagnetic pulse. They knew that vegan biology made them vulnerable to certain atmospheric toxins that would be harmless to humans. They knew that despite their advanced technology, vegans had never developed weapons more sophisticated than crowd control devices. Humans had always been very good at gathering information. Across the chamber, the Nexus Collective representative was engaged in animated conversation with a group of smaller delegations. The Nexus were cybernetic beings who had replaced most of their organic components with advanced technology centuries ago. They considered themselves the most logical and efficient species in the galaxy, having eliminated the messy complications of biological emotion and instinct. "Curious about the human delegation?" asked Nexus Prime Unit 7742, noticing Sarah's attention. The cybernetic being approached with the precise movements characteristic of its species. "Always interested in learning from others," Sarah replied pleasantly. "Your species has been most predictable," the Nexus representative said. "Biological entities driven by emotion and primitive social bonds, yet you have achieved remarkable diplomatic consistency. Our models suggest you will continue to avoid conflict for the foreseeable future." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "Conflict tends to be inefficient." "Indeed. Your commitment to peaceful resolution aligns with optimal resource allocation strategies." The Nexus had no idea that human diplomats were specifically trained to appear predictable while gathering intelligence. Every conversation, every casual interaction was a data collection opportunity. Humans had learned that other species tended to underestimate anyone who didn't display obvious aggression, and they had turned that bias into a strategic advantage. As the formal session resumed, a priority message arrived on Sarah's private comm channel. It was from Captain Maria Rodriguez of the UES Harmony, currently stationed in the Outer Rim territories. The message was brief but concerning. "Korthak fleet movements detected near Kepler Station. Estimate 47 vessels, heavy assault configuration. Request immediate diplomatic intervention." Kepler Station was a joint research facility operated by 6 different species, including humans. It was supposed to be protected under the Galactic Non-Aggression Accords. If the Korthak were planning to seize it by force, they were essentially declaring war on multiple species simultaneously. Sarah's training kicked in automatically. Her enhanced tactical implants, technology that the galaxy didn't know humans possessed, began calculating response scenarios. The human diplomatic corps wasn't just trained in negotiation and cultural sensitivity. Every ambassador was a military officer first, chosen for their ability to think strategically under pressure. She activated her emergency communication protocol, sending coded updates to Earth and to human ships throughout the galaxy. To anyone watching, she appeared to be taking routine notes. In reality, she was coordinating the response of the most dangerous military force the galaxy had never seen. Humans had not achieved peace through weakness. They had achieved it through strength that was so overwhelming that no rational enemy would consider challenging them. The galaxy had mistaken human restraint for human inability, never realizing that Earth's diplomats were all veterans of a species that had evolved from persistence hunters and pack predators. The peaceful facade that humanity presented to the galaxy wasn't a lie. It was a choice, and choices could be changed. As Sarah continued to participate in the mundane discussions about trade routes and mining rights, her enhanced nervous system was already preparing for the possibility that diplomacy might fail. Her muscle memory recalled the weight of a pulse rifle, the optimal firing positions for different combat scenarios, the weak points in Korthak armor that she had memorized from military briefings. The galaxy had grown comfortable with human diplomacy because they assumed humans were naturally peaceful. They had never considered that maybe humans were peaceful because they were so good at war that conflict had become unnecessary. The Korthak delegation was still discussing their plans in whispers, unaware that their conversation was being monitored and analyzed by human intelligence networks across 3 star systems. They saw Sarah Chen as a minor obstacle to be worked around, a soft-spoken diplomat who would file paperwork rather than fight. They had never been more wrong about anything in their lives. As the session moved toward its conclusion, Sarah maintained her pleasant demeanor while calculating how quickly human military assets could be repositioned if negotiations failed. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth's most decorated combat veterans had become its diplomatic core, and why the species that had conquered its own world through superior tactics and strategic thinking might not be as harmless as they appeared. In 12 hours, the Korthak fleet would reach Kepler Station. In 12 hours, the galaxy would discover what happened when someone threatened human civilians while assuming that human diplomats were too civilized to respond with overwhelming force. Sarah Chen smiled politely and began composing her formal response to the Korthak territorial claims, knowing that she was probably writing the last diplomatic communication humanity would send before the galaxy learned to fear them. Captain Maria Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, watching the tactical display as 47 Korthak vessels moved into attack formation around Kepler Station. The research facility looked peaceful against the backdrop of space, its lights twinkling as scientists from 6 different species continued their work, unaware that a fleet of warships was preparing to destroy or capture them. "Communication from Admiral Chen," reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson from his position at the communications console. "Diplomatic solution has failed. Rules of engagement have been updated to full military response." Maria nodded grimly. Admiral Chen, Sarah's sister, commanded the human fleet from her flagship, positioned 3 systems away. The Rodriguez family had been serving in Earth's military for 6 generations, but this would be the first time humans fought in space against an alien enemy. It would also be the first time the galaxy saw what human military doctrine actually looked like. "Signal all ships," Maria ordered. "Execute Alpha 7 protocol. Full stealth approach. Weapons free upon target acquisition." Around Kepler Station, space appeared empty except for the Korthak fleet. The research station's administrators had sent desperate pleas for help to the Galactic Council, but the nearest peacekeeping vessels were still 8 hours away. The Korthak had timed their attack perfectly, or so they thought. What they didn't know was that humans had been building a military presence throughout the galaxy for 50 years, hidden in plain sight. Every human civilian vessel had been designed with dual-purpose capabilities. Every human research station included defensive systems that could be activated remotely. Every human diplomat carried military-grade combat implants and direct communication links to Earth's command structure. The galaxy had seen human merchants, scientists, engineers, and diplomats. They had never seen human soldiers. Aboard the Korthak flagship Blood Ripper, Fleet Commander Kresh was reviewing final attack plans with his senior officers. The Korthaks were experienced warriors, having conquered 12 different worlds over the past century. Their ships were heavily armed, and their troops were trained from birth for combat. "The station's defenses are minimal," reported his tactical officer. "Automated systems only, designed for asteroid deflection. No military vessels in the area except for a few human civilian ships." "Human ships," Kresh laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "They'll run at the first sign of trouble. Humans are merchants and talkers, not fighters." "Sir," interrupted his sensor operator, "I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from the human vessels." Kresh studied the display. 3 human ships were positioned near the station, a merchant freighter, a scientific survey vessel, and what appeared to be a passenger transport. All were broadcasting standard civilian identification codes. "Probably powering down their engines to conserve fuel while they decide whether to flee," Kresh decided. "Begin the attack." The Korthak fleet opened fire on Kepler Station's shields, their plasma cannons lighting up space with deadly energy. The station's automated defenses responded weakly, as expected. On the surface, it looked like a typical Korthak military operation, overwhelming force against minimal resistance. Then, the human civilian ships stopped pretending to be civilian. The merchant freighter UES Commerce suddenly expanded, its cargo pods separating to reveal the sleek lines of a heavy cruiser. Automated systems deployed weapon batteries that had been disguised as storage containers. The ship's energy signature spiked as military-grade fusion reactors came online, and its hull reconfigured itself from the boxy shape of a cargo hauler to the predatory silhouette of a warship. The scientific survey vessel UES Discovery underwent a similar transformation. Its research equipment retracted into armored housings, revealing advanced sensor arrays and targeting systems. External labs detached to become autonomous fighter drones, each one carrying enough firepower to cripple a frigate. The passenger transport UES Gateway was the most dramatic change. Its hull split open like a flower, revealing that the entire civilian vessel had been built around a massive military command center. Weapon ports that had been disguised as viewing windows opened to reveal heavy artillery. The ship's length doubled as hidden sections extended, and squadron after squadron of human fighters launched from bays that shouldn't have existed. Fleet Commander Kresh stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His sensors were now detecting energy readings that rivaled his own flagship. The three civilian vessels were not only military ships in disguise, they were more advanced than anything in the Korthak fleet. "Sir," his tactical officer said urgently, "I'm reading 17 more contacts. They just appeared." Around the Korthak fleet, space twisted as human ships dropped out of stealth mode. They hadn't been hiding behind asteroids or using conventional cloaking technology. They had been using gravitational manipulation to bend light around their hulls, making them completely invisible to any known sensor system. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication channels, speaking in perfect Korthak. "Korthak Fleet Commander Kresh, this is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system, or we will consider you a hostile force." Kresh activated his own communication system, his confidence returning. 20 human ships against 47 Korthak vessels. The humans were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. "Human Admiral," he replied, "you are interfering with a legitimate Korthak territorial claim. Withdraw your forces or face the consequences." 29 seconds, Admiral Chen said calmly. Kresh cut the communication and turned to his fleet. "All ships, engage human vessels. Show them what happens when prey tries to threaten predators." The Korthak fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, torpedo launchers, and particle beams created a deadly light show as 47 warships focused their attention on 20 human vessels. The human response was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of forming traditional battle lines or trying to match the Korthak ship for ship, the human fleet scattered like a disturbed pack of wolves. Each ship moved independently, using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid incoming fire while maintaining constant communication with the others. The UES Commerce accelerated straight toward the Korthak flagship, taking hits on its shields while returning fire with precision that was almost impossible. Every shot from its weapons found critical systems on enemy vessels, engine compartments, weapon batteries, command bridges. The Korthak had never seen such accurate targeting. Meanwhile, the fighter squadrons from the UES Gateway were demonstrating human aerial combat doctrine. Instead of engaging in individual dogfights, they moved in coordinated groups, supporting each other with overlapping fields of fire. Their tactics were based on thousands of years of pack-hunting behavior, refined by centuries of military evolution. 3 Korthak vessels exploded in the first minute of combat. "Impossible," Kresh breathed, watching his tactical display. "Their weapons shouldn't be able to penetrate our shields." His tactical officer was frantically analyzing the human weapons fire. "Sir, they're not using standard energy weapons. I'm reading some kind of kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed." What the Korthak didn't understand was that humans had never abandoned their projectile weapons. While other species had moved to energy-based systems, humans had perfected mass drivers that could accelerate metal slugs to tremendous velocities. A piece of tungsten moving at 10% of light speed could penetrate any known shield system and armor configuration. The battle became a massacre. Human ships moved through the Korthak formation like sharks through a school of fish, their weapons finding every weakness in enemy defenses. The Korthaks were discovering that 50 years of human diplomatic intelligence gathering had not been wasted. Humans knew exactly where to hit every class of Korthak vessel for maximum effect. More importantly, the humans were demonstrating tactical thinking that the galaxy had never encountered. Earth's military doctrine was based on the principle that predators should never fight fair. Every engagement was planned to maximize human advantages while exploiting enemy weaknesses. When Korthak vessels tried to retreat, they found their escape routes blocked by human ships that had somehow predicted their movements. When they attempted to regroup, human fighters appeared from unexpected directions to disrupt their formations. When they tried to target human vessels, they discovered that humans had been studying Korthak targeting systems and had developed specific countermeasures. "Sir," the Korthak sensor operator reported, "we've lost 21 vessels. The humans haven't lost a single ship." Kresh stared at the display in growing horror. His fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to anticipate every move he made. The humans weren't just superior warriors. They were superior strategists who had been planning for this exact scenario. "All ships," he ordered desperately, "withdraw to the outer system. Implement emergency jump protocols." But as his surviving vessels tried to flee, they discovered that their jump drives had been disabled. The human ships were using some kind of localized field that prevented faster-than-light travel. They were trapped with an enemy that showed no mercy and made no mistakes. Admiral Chen's voice returned to the communication channels. "Fleet Commander Kresh, you have one opportunity to surrender. Any Korthak vessel that does not immediately power down its weapons will be destroyed." Around the battlefield, news drones from various galactic media outlets had arrived to document what they assumed would be a minor skirmish. Instead, they were broadcasting live footage of the most one-sided military engagement in recorded galactic history. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as 19 Korthak vessels surrendered rather than face complete annihilation. The remaining 7 ships that tried to continue fighting were destroyed with surgical precision, their crews given no chance to inflict any damage on their attackers. In less than 6 hours, humanity had revealed that they possessed the most advanced military technology in the galaxy, tactical doctrine that rendered traditional warfare obsolete, and strategic planning capabilities that had allowed them to prepare for conflicts that other species didn't even know were coming. The peaceful diplomats that the galaxy had grown to trust were revealed as the military officers of a species that had never stopped being apex predators. On Kepler Station, researchers from 6 different species watched through observation windows as human marines boarded the captured Korthak vessels. The marines moved with the fluid coordination of pack hunters, their weapons and equipment more advanced than anything the galaxy had previously seen. Dr. Vex Na, a Zephyrian xenobiologist, turned to her human colleague, Dr. Bash Williams, with a mixture of awe and terror. "How long have your people been preparing for this?" she asked. Dr. Williams, who had served as a combat medic before joining the research station, smiled grimly. "Since the day we first met you." The galaxy was finally beginning to understand what it meant to deal with a species that had evolved as persistence hunters on one of the most dangerous worlds in known space. Humans didn't avoid conflict because they were weak. They avoided it because they were so overwhelmingly capable of violence that peace was simply more efficient. The age of human diplomacy was ending. The age of human military supremacy was just beginning. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened exactly 18 hours after the Battle of Kepler Station, as historians would later call it. The massive crystal chamber that had once hosted peaceful discussions about trade routes and mining rights now felt like a courtroom where humanity itself was on trial. Grand Chancellor Vex stood at the central podium, his usually composed demeanor showing visible strain. Around the chamber, representatives from 17 species sat in varying states of shock, fear, and confusion. The footage from Kepler Station had been broadcast across the galaxy, shattering 50 years of assumptions about human nature in less than 6 hours of combat. The Galactic Council recognizes Ambassador Sarah Chen of the Human Federation, Chancellor Vex announced, his voice carrying none of its usual warmth. Sarah rose from her seat, appearing as calm and diplomatic as she had every day for the past 5 years. She walked to the speaker's platform with the same measured pace, wearing the same conservative gray suit, her hands folded in the same peaceful gesture. To the assembled delegates, she looked exactly like the reasonable, soft-spoken diplomat they had always known. But now, they knew better. "Honored delegates," Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "I understand that recent events have raised questions about the nature of human involvement in galactic affairs." Questions? The speaker was Chancellor Prime of the Nexus Collective, his cybernetic voice modulator struggling to convey the emotion he was experiencing. "Your species has been deceiving us for 5 decades. You presented yourselves as peaceful merchants and diplomats while maintaining the most advanced military force in the galaxy." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "That's not entirely accurate, Chancellor Prime. We never claimed to be pacifists. We simply chose to prioritize peaceful solutions to conflicts." "By hiding your true capabilities?" High Healer Luminara of the Vegans had abandoned her usual ethereal calm. Her voice carried an edge of panic that her species rarely displayed. "Your people have been studying our defenses, our weaknesses, our military capabilities while pretending to be our friends." "We've been studying everything about everyone," Sarah admitted without hesitation. "It's what intelligent species do when they encounter potential threats or allies. Every species in this chamber has intelligence networks. The difference is that humans are apparently better at it than most." The blunt honesty of her statement sent ripples of unease through the assembled delegates. Ambassador Krolak of the Thermal Consortium, a species known for their direct approach to diplomacy, leaned forward in his environmental suit. "Are you saying that humans consider every other species in the galaxy to be potential enemies?" Sarah considered the question carefully before responding. "We consider every other species to be unknown quantities with their own interests and motivations. Our history has taught us that preparation prevents unnecessary conflict." "Your history," interrupted Fleet Marshal Thane of the Korthak Remnant, speaking for what remained of his species' delegation after the disaster at Kepler Station. "Tell us about this history, Ambassador. What kind of world creates warriors who disguise themselves as diplomats?" The chamber fell silent. This was the question that had been haunting every species since the battle footage revealed the true nature of human military doctrine. What kind of evolutionary environment could produce a species capable of such devastating tactical efficiency while maintaining such convincing, peaceful facades? Sarah's expression grew thoughtful, almost sad. "Earth was a difficult world. We evolved alongside predators that could kill us in seconds if we made mistakes. We developed in an environment where every other species was either food, competition, or a threat to our survival." She activated a holographic display showing images of Earth's biosphere. The assembled delegates watched in fascination and growing horror as she showed them creatures from humanity's homeworld. sharks that could sense electrical fields in the water, big cats that could stalk prey for days without being detected, pack hunters that could coordinate complex strategies without verbal communication. We learned early that survival required three things, Sarah continued: superior intelligence, better tools, and the ability to cooperate in groups. Over millions of years, these traits were refined by constant selection pressure from enemies that were faster, stronger, and better armed than we were. The holographic display shifted to show human development: stone tools, agriculture, metallurgy, industrialization, space travel. But now the delegates were seeing it through a different lens. Every advancement wasn't just progress, it was the development of increasingly sophisticated ways to eliminate threats and exploit resources. By the time we achieved space travel, Sarah explained, we had already fought thousands of wars against our own species. We had developed military doctrine, strategic planning, and weapons technology through necessity. We had learned that the best way to avoid conflict was to be so overwhelmingly prepared for it that rational enemies would choose negotiation instead. Dr. Zenka of the Research Collective, a species prized for their analytical abilities, spoke up from his position near the center of the chamber. But why the deception? Why not simply announce your capabilities when you first made contact? Sarah's smile was genuinely warm. But now it carried an edge that hadn't been visible before. Because we learned something important from our first contact protocols. The galaxy's existing power structures were based on species that had evolved in safer environments than Earth. Most of you developed intelligence without the same survival pressures we experienced. She gestured to the assembled delegates. The Vegans achieved peaceful unification of their homeworld because their planet had no large predators. The Nexus Collective eliminated conflict by replacing biological emotion with logical processes. The Zephyrians developed trade-based societies because their world's resources were abundant enough that competition wasn't necessary. The implications of her words settled over the chamber like a cold wind. The galaxy's dominant species had achieved their positions because they had never faced the evolutionary pressures that created humanity. We realized, Sarah continued, that if we revealed our true capabilities immediately, we would be seen as a threat rather than potential allies. So we chose to integrate slowly, learning about galactic civilization while demonstrating our commitment to peaceful coexistence. Peaceful coexistence through overwhelming force, Chancellor Prime observed. The most effective kind, Sarah agreed. We've prevented dozens of potential conflicts simply by being present. Pirates don't attack shipping lanes when human vessels are nearby. Border disputes tend to resolve themselves when human mediators are involved. Species think twice about aggressive expansion when they know humans are monitoring the situation. Ambassador Meltor of the Gentle Ones, a herbivorous species known for their philosophical approach to existence, spoke in a trembling voice. How many of your civilian vessels are actually military ships? All of them, Sarah answered without hesitation. Every human ship is designed for dual-purpose operations. Every human civilian is trained for emergency military service. Every human outpost includes defensive capabilities that can be activated if necessary. The silence that followed was deafening. The galaxy was realizing that humans hadn't just hidden their military capabilities, they had hidden the fact that their entire society was essentially militarized. Are we your prisoners? High Healer Luminara asked quietly. Sarah looked genuinely surprised by the question. Of course not. Why would you think that? Because you could conquer any of our worlds whenever you choose, Luminara replied. Your demonstration at Kepler Station proved that no existing military force in the galaxy could stand against you. That's true, Sarah acknowledged. We probably could conquer most civilized worlds if we chose to do so, but why would we want to? She activated another holographic display, This one showing galactic trade networks, resource flows, and technological exchange patterns. Conquest is inefficient. It requires enormous resources to maintain control over unwilling populations. It disrupts the economic and scientific cooperation that benefits everyone. The display highlighted humanity's integration into galactic civilization, their contributions to medical research, their improvements to transportation technology, their peaceful resolution of conflicts between other species. "We prefer the current arrangement," Sarah explained. "Voluntary cooperation produces better results than forced compliance. Happy allies are more useful than conquered enemies." Fleet Marshal Thane of the Korthak leaned forward aggressively. "And what happens when someone challenges this arrangement? What happens when a species decides they don't want to cooperate with human interests?" Sarah's expression grew cold, and for the first time since the session began, every delegate in the chamber felt a chill of genuine fear. When she spoke, her voice carried the absolute certainty of someone stating an undeniable fact. "Then they discover why every other species in the galaxy chooses cooperation." The threat wasn't stated directly, but it hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. The delegates had seen what happened to the Korthak fleet. They had watched human military doctrine in action. They understood that humanity's diplomatic approach was a courtesy, not a limitation. Chancellor Vex attempted to regain control of the discussion. "What does humanity want from the galaxy going forward? What are your long-term intentions?" Sarah's demeanor shifted back to the pleasant diplomatic manner that had characterized her for years. "The same thing we've always wanted: peaceful coexistence, mutual prosperity, and the advancement of galactic civilization. Nothing has changed except your understanding of how we ensure those goals are achieved." "By maintaining the threat of overwhelming force?" Dr. Zenka asked. "By maintaining the capability to respond appropriately to any threat against peaceful civilization," Sarah corrected. "The Korthak attacked a research station staffed by civilians from 6 different species. They threatened scientists who were working to advance medical knowledge that could benefit the entire galaxy. We responded proportionally." Ambassador Krolak spoke up from his environmental suit. "Proportionally? You destroyed or captured an entire fleet." "Proportionally," Sarah confirmed. "The Korthak brought 47 military vessels to attack a research station. We brought 20 ships to defend it. We could have brought 100 or 1,000. We chose to use exactly enough force to resolve the situation with minimal casualties." The implications were staggering. If 20 human ships could eliminate 47 Korthak vessels without taking a single loss, how powerful was the full human military? How many ships did they actually have? How long had they been building their forces while masquerading as peaceful merchants and diplomats? "The galaxy needs to understand something," Sarah continued, her voice taking on the tone of a teacher explaining a crucial lesson. "Humans don't want to rule the galaxy. We don't want to conquer other species or impose our will on unwilling populations. We want exactly what we've always claimed to want: peace and prosperity for all civilized beings." She paused, making eye contact with delegates from every major species. "But we've learned from our history that peace is only possible when rational beings understand the consequences of choosing violence over cooperation. The galaxy is now better informed about those consequences." High Healer Luminara found her voice again. "And if we choose not to accept human guidance?" Sarah's smile was genuinely warm, but her words carried the weight of absolute conviction. "Then you'll discover that the galaxy is a dangerous place for species that make poor decisions about their neighbors." The session continued for 6 more hours, with delegates asking increasingly specific questions about human capabilities, intentions, and long-term plans. Sarah answered every question with the same diplomatic courtesy she had always shown. But now her words carried the implicit backing of the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. When the session finally ended, The delegates filed out in thoughtful silence. The galaxy had changed in the span of a single day. The peaceful merchants and diplomats that had integrated so smoothly into galactic civilization were revealed as the advance guard of a species that had evolved to be the perfect predators. But perhaps most troubling of all was the realization that humanity's approach might actually be working. Galactic civilization was more peaceful, more prosperous, and more stable than it had been in centuries. Trade flourished under the protection of human military might. Scientific cooperation advanced under the guarantee of human intervention against aggression. The galaxy was learning that sometimes the most effective peacekeepers were the ones capable of ending any war before it could truly begin. They were discovering that apex predators, properly motivated, could be the most effective guardians of civilization. As Sarah Chen returned to her quarters aboard the human embassy ship, she reflected on the day's events. The masquerade was over, but perhaps that was for the best. The galaxy now understood exactly what kind of species they were dealing with, and they were choosing cooperation anyway. Perhaps humans weren't the only intelligent species in the galaxy after all.